As you can see, Bitcoin has been coming down. I made a couple plays this week I'm going to show you. And I also want to point out a couple other stocks that I believe would be good buys for the long term. And then we'll wrap it up with updating my spreadsheet with those high yield distributions that we are to earn this week on my high yield ETF positions, so I can find out what that new real price per share will be. Hello, my friends, this is Legend. So Bitcoin has been coming down. We had this line here at this 64.7. Was really hoping that we were going to stay above it because we did go above it around the mid of June. But after that, it did drop back down below it. And as I stated in previous video, that 64.7K line would now be a resistance line. And that is exactly what happened, right? It did try to come up, break past it, but got rejected. And then started coming on down. It actually came all the way down and started testing this other line we had drawn in here at this 59.2. And we had that line drawn in because that was the bottom back here, right? It did come down to about 59.2K on Bitcoin, and looks like we are now back down to that 59.2K. Now we are seeing some definite selling going on Bitcoin, and that is why it has moved all the way down to that 59.2. I'm hoping to be able to keep that 59.2, but if not, that next line looks like about 56.5. But I'm really hoping that we can keep that 59.2, use that as a support line, and we can move back up just like we did back here around the 1st of June. We did come down, test it, and moved back up, and actually ended up breaking past this resistance line, but it was short-lived before it did come back down below that 64.7 before coming all the way down and retesting this 59.2. Now, because of Bitcoin's drop here, that did give me a couple opportunities for CONY and HOOY. And before we jump onto those, if you don't mind, hit that like button, as it would be much appreciated. And here we are on CONY. And you can see right here, we were coming down a little bit. And one of my trigger points is when that RSI2, which is this yellow line at the bottom of my screen, once it drops below a 10 on that RSI2, that could be a potential buy for me. And as you can see, it actually dropped down below 10 twice. It did it on 6/24 and on 6/25. Both of those are below 10 on that RSI2. So I actually did purchase twice on CONY. I actually purchased some shares on the 6/24 drop and on the 6/25 drop. I did not purchase on the 6/26, which was that Friday, because it actually was above 10 on that RSI2, because we did move up on a green candle here and ended up closing at $19.18. Now, of course, if you would have looked at it probably that morning of Friday, it probably would have been below 10 as well. And it looks like it got as low as 18.04 on Friday, and you could have purchased more shares at that time, right? Because chances are that RSI2 at that time of the day, it would have still been below 10 and could have been a purchase using that RSI2 trigger method. But having that RSI2 below 10 and at the bottom of that Bollinger Band, as you can see right here, that yellow line, that's the bottom of the Bollinger Band, and we are definitely at the bottom of it, right? So both of those, to me, signaled for a potential buy. Now, that's a potential buy. The one last trigger point that I need is if that price is under my real price per share, then I would make that purchase. But if it is not below my real price per share, then honestly, I'm not even looking to buy any shares of it, because I do not want to raise that real price per share, because my whole goal is to get these paid off. And in order to get them paid off, I've got to keep running into the right direction. I cannot move that real price per share up because that just adds more time back into my goal of getting them paid off. And we'll take a look at that on my spreadsheet once we get to that point. But I wanted to make a note that we will be showing 2 purchases on CONY on my spreadsheet later in this video. Now, if we take a look at HOOY, and here we are on HOOY, you can see we were having a down pull here of that stock itself. And on 625, you can see right down here at the bottom of the screen, at 625, that number right here is the RSI2. It was below 10. It was actually at 5.6 on the close of that Thursday. So on 625, I actually did purchase some shares of HOOY. So we'll be showing that on my spreadsheet as well. Now, a couple other stocks I wanted to make note of, and these two are not high yield ETFs, but I just wanted to show and make note of these, also utilizing that RSI2 method. And the first one being Google. And you can see on Google, we are at the bottom of that Bollinger Band, and that RSI2 is under 10 on Friday. Now, could it continue to move down? Sure it can. But if I'm looking for a potential buy point to help dollar cost average into a position, then it's very possible I could use that Friday on 626 to purchase some more shares of Google, because it is below 10 on the RSI2 and it is at the bottom of that Bollinger Band, which is just a bit more icing on the cake in my opinion. And the second one I wanted to make note of was NVDA. Now this is NVDA. You can see that it is indeed below 10 on that RSI2. And again, that icing on the cake is that candle is at the bottom of that Bollinger Band. So both Google and NVIDIA could be a potential buy point as it was showing on Friday. Not saying that that's the lowest or even at the bottom, but a good position in my opinion. But now let's go right back to our high yield stock tracker sheet, and let's go and let's enter in those distributions, and let's enter in the purchases that I made on CONY and HOOY and see what my new real price per share will be. And here we are on my stock tracker sheet for those high yield ETFs. Now on this stock tracker sheet, it does track each individual stock or ETF that you enter in here. And in my case, I am showing all of my high yield ETFs. It tracks each one individually, and then it also shows you at the top up here what that total gain or loss is over all of your positions that you're holding within this stock tracker sheet. If it's green underneath that particular stock ticker symbol, then that means that if you were to sell those shares, it would be a gain. But if it is red, that means if you were to sell those shares, you would be at a loss on those. But you can see after totaling all of mine up, I would actually make money off of selling all of these. Now, I'm not selling them, but I just wanted to show you that I'm currently still positive if I were to get out of every one of these high yield ETFs. But the ones that I am down on are CONY, SMCY, and HOOY. And as you can see, the rest of them, they are green. So the only ones that are red are the ones that I would take a loss on if I just sold that particular ETF and got out of it completely. Then I would be at a loss for that particular ETF. But if you'd like to get a copy of this spreadsheet, come on over, join the Discord. The link will be in the pinned comments and in the description below, where you can get a copy of this spreadsheet within my Discord channel. Once you go to that link, you'll just make a copy of this sheet so that you can go in, add your high yield ETF stock tickers, and find out what your real price per share is, if indeed you are up in that position or if you are down in that position. And this sheet does take into account those distributions that you're earning, because to me, that is part of what you are earning on these high yield ETFs. And I believe they should be calculated into that average. And that is what this real price per share is. So let's just go ahead and jump right on this and get this going. And we'll start right off with CONY. And to get to that individual sheet is pretty simple. You hover right over your ticker. It gives a little pop-up and it takes you straight to that sheet. And you can see we are on CONY. It gives that current price of CONY. And then of course, all the purchases you have made go into this table and the distributions would go into this table. It does all the calculations for you and kicks out your real price per share right here. So scrolling on down, I had mentioned I made a couple purchases and the first purchase on CONY was on 6/24. My purchase price on this one was $19.75 and I purchased 25 shares. Now, once I hit enter this purchase, because it is under my real price per share of $28.08, that $19.75 purchase is going to help to lower that $28.08 real price per share because I am purchasing shares under that real price per share. So that purchase of those 25 shares at $19.75 is going to lower that real price per share down to $27.55. Now I had made a second purchase that next day on 6/25, and for that one I actually was able to get those shares at $18.40 per share, and I purchased 25 shares at that price as well. Since that $18.40 is still under that real price per share, it's going to lower it even further. So that purchase is going to lower that real price per share from $27.55 down to $27 even. So right there, I just dropped the price of CONY by $1 per share just by purchasing shares under that real price per share. So that just gets me just that much closer to CONY's current price. And if CONY decides to move back up, it's got less room to go before it's going to cross over my real price per share. Now, those purchases did drop that real price per share, but I also earned a distribution, which is also going to lower that real price per share even more. So let's enter that into my distribution table here. And I've already entered in the amount that we actually earned per share, but all I have to do is enter in the number of shares that would be associated with this distribution. Now, the date that I use for this distribution is not the actual distribution date. It's the actual X date, because that tells me I have to own my shares before this date. So if I purchase shares on or after 6/25, I cannot account those shares for this distribution. So I can go right over here to my purchases, and anything before 6/25, I can count those shares. So scrolling right up, that one purchase was on 6/24. That is before the 6/25, so I can count those. But the last purchase was actually on 6/25, so I cannot count those 25 shares. So I can count all my shares except for 25 of those total shares. So how many total shares do I have? Well, I have 420. I would need to subtract 25 shares from that 420. So that's 420 minus 25. So that's 395 shares that I'm going to be able to count for that distribution. So 395 is going to help to lower that real price per share from $27 down to $26.76. Very nice, right? Now, CONY is down, but Bitcoin is down. And I believe if that once Bitcoin decides to start moving up, I believe CONY is going to move up as well. And by me lowering my real price per share, it's got less room to go up before crossing over. I am narrowing that gap, or at least keeping it to a minimum amount the best I can. But I do need help from the underlying, which is Coinbase, to move up so that CONY can move up. But that is how I am playing these high yield ETFs. I am looking to get them paid off, but to get them paid off, I first got to get my real price per share under that current price. So I need help from the price of that ticker to move up, but I'm also helping myself out by locking in those distributions and purchasing shares once it's at a point I believe is a good buy point. Moving on to PLTY. PLTY is paid off, and as you can see, it's at a minus 8.05 per share for that real price per share. So this one here, all those distributions I earn are free and clear because I have earned more in distributions, as you can see right here, $2,542 in distributions. How much did I have invested? $2,244. So I've earned back more than I actually had invested, and therefore it is paid off. So all those distributions coming in are free and clear, not including taxes. But I have a total of 37 shares. I entered that into my spreadsheet, and that's going to help lower that real price per share from minus 805 down to minus 8.31. Very nice. So if I were to sell all my shares of PLTY at the current price, I would make $1,323. For NVDY, we earned 10 cents this week, and I have a total of 71 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share from $9.34 down to $9.24. And if I were to sell all my shares at the current price of NVDY at $12.03, I would make $197. For ULTY, we earned 38 cents, and I have 56 shares. That's going to help to lower that real price per share of $28.70 down to $28.32. And if I were to sell my shares of ULTY at the current price, I would make $34. For MSTY, this one is indeed just like PLTY, paid off. I have earned back more in distributions and premium here than I actually had invested. Just in distributions alone, I've earned $11,983, and I only had $11,499 invested. So we earned 18 cents this week. It's a little low, but of course, Bitcoin is also coming down. So therefore, those distributions will be affected by that drop. But I have 95 shares of MSTY, and that's going to lower that real price per share of minus $13.86 down to minus $14.05. Now, one thing to note is right here, this is also telling me that I have a total of about $1,334 that I could buy back into MSTY, and that would be roughly about 115 shares of MSTY at the current price, and I would still stay in the paid off status. But I would be eating into all of those gains that I have made, but that would increase my share count. And I still would not have any of my personal capital invested. I would be using those distributions that I have made above and beyond what I actually had invested to buy more shares. So I'm basically using YMAX dime to increase my share count. Now, I have not done that, but I could, right? Each and every person has to make their own decision of what to do with that capital that is coming in or those distributions. You can choose to buy more shares of a high yield ETF, or you can use it to buy something like Google or NVDA, like I have been in the past. Buying other shares of other stocks just helps to diversify it out a bit. But if I were to sell all my shares of MSTY at the current price of $11.53, I would make $2,430. For SMCY, we earned 7 cents, and I have a total of 350 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $5.64 down to $5.57, which is still above that current price of SMCY. So therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of SMCY at the current price, I would take a loss of $119. But as we were showing, the semiconductors are down, so therefore SMCY is down as well. But if that does turn around and starts moving back up, since I am lowering that real price per share, it's less of a gap between that current price and my real price per share. So therefore, if it was to go back to that original price it was, say at $6, $7, it's going to be a good $1 to $1.50 above my real price per share. and therefore it will show as green on my summary page. Next, we have AMDY. Now, AMDY, we earned 88 cents this week, and I have a total of 164 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $17.02 down to $16.14. So if I were to sell all my shares of AMDY at the current price of $54 for AMDY, I would make $6,209. For YMAX, we earned 7 cents, and I have 758 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $5.71 down to $5.63. And if I were to sell my shares of YMAX at the current price, I would make $1,658. Here we are on HOOY. Now, HOOY, I did make a purchase on HOOY. So let's go ahead and enter that purchase over here because I might be able to account for those shares in that distribution. So the date that I made that purchase was on 6/25, and the price was at $28.53. And that was because it was under the 10 on that RSI2. And you can see with the current price of HOOY now at $30.19, looks like I made a good buy at a $28.53 buy price. How many shares did I purchase? Well, I got 25 shares of this one as well. And since the $28.53 is under my real price per share, it's going to help to lower that real price per share, which in turn will help those unrealized gains. Because currently my real price per share is over that current price. So therefore, if I were to sell, it's going to be at a loss. But this purchase is going to help lower that real price per share and narrow that gap between the two. So that 25 shares is going to help to drop that real price per share of $36.24 down to $34.96. What a move down, right? That's an awesome move down. And buying them at $28.53, and now that the price of HOOY is at $30, that's looking pretty good for me. Pretty happy and excited about that purchase. And that was all because I was using that RSI2 for that trigger point because it is under that real price per share. So now let's go ahead and enter in that distribution amount. And we have 64 cents this week. And I have a total of 151 shares. But can I count all 151 shares? Well, let's take a look. That X date is 6/25 and my purchase was on 6/25. So I cannot count for those 25 shares I just purchased because I have to own those shares before the X date of that distribution. And if I do not, I cannot count those shares. So I must subtract 25 shares from the 151 shares I have. And that is going to be 151 minus the 25, and that's going to be 126 shares. So I will enter in 126 into the spreadsheet here. And next week, I will be able to enter in that 151 because those 25 shares will be eligible for that next distribution. But for this one, that 126 shares is also going to help to lower that real price per share from $34.96 down to $34.43, bringing it on down. Now that gap between the current price of HOOY and my real price per share of HOOY is just a little over $4. A very nice move and a very good purchase at a $28.53 purchase, in my opinion. And none of this is financial advice, of course. For QDTE, we earned 23 cents, and I have 155 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $19.36 down to $19.12. So if I were to sell all my shares of QDTE at the current price, I would make $1,709. For IWMY, we earned 11 cents, and I have 551 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $13.42 down to $13.31. So if I were to sell all my shares of IWMY at the current price, I would make $3,509. For QQQY, we earned 13 cents, and I have 551 shares of QQQY. And this is going to help lower that real price per share of $17.51 down to $17.38. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of QQQY at the current price, I would make $3,196. For WDTE, I have a total of 540 shares. We earned 17 cents this week, and that's going to help lower that real price per share of $22.83 down to $22.66. And if I were to sell my shares of WDTE at the current price, I would make $3,740. For JEPQ, this is a monthly payer, and I do not have a distribution to enter in for this week. So a current real price per share of $7.97 still stands, and therefore if I had to sell all my shares of JEPQ at the current price, I would make $2,829. For DIVO, we did earn a distribution for this one, and this one does pay out monthly. And that's an 18 cents distribution, and I have a total of 17 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $44.19 down to $44.01. So if I were to sell all my shares of DIVO at the current price, I'd make $28. And that's going to wrap up all of the ones that I have for the high yield ETFs. And to get back to that summary page, we just hover right over top of this back to summary button right here, click the pop-up, and we're right back to that summary page. So this makes it quite easy for you to maneuver around in the sheet, enter in your buys, enter in your distributions, and then going right back to that summary page and getting the overall summary of all of your high yield ETFs that you have in your portfolio. So as you can see, if I were to get out of all these high yield ETFs, I would make $23,173. So I'm not at a loss, even though I am down on CONY, I'm down on SMCY and HOOY. Now those purchases on HOOY and CONY did help bring that real price per share down, and therefore narrowing that gap between the current price and my real price per share. And that is my goal, is to get that gap down to zero eventually, and then hopefully getting my real price per share below that market price so that eventually I can get this paid off and my real price per share being zero or under, so that those distributions coming in would be free and clear, going straight into my account, fresh powder to use how I so choose. Now it does take some time and it does take patience, but eventually I believe I will get there. So again, if you'd like to get a copy of this sheet, that link is in the pinned comments and in the description below, where you'll find that link to this sheet. Then all you gotta do is make that copy and start plugging in your ETFs, your purchases, and your distributions, and find out where you really currently sit. Because if you're not tracking your real price per share, you really do not know where you currently sit in your high yield ETFs. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, Legend out.